I am Amara Whitfield, and I am 22 years old. I had just returned from the home improvement store when the woman stepped onto my porch. I was still holding a small paper bag filled with wall anchors and screws, the kind you buy when you're fixing things yourself, because hiring help costs money you'd rather reinvest elsewhere. The house behind me was still a work in progress, patched walls, half-painted trim, a faint smell of fresh wood and dust. But it was mine. I bought it 6 months earlier, alone, with money I earned myself. When the woman asked, "Amara Whitfield?" I nodded carefully. She handed me a thick envelope and said, "You've been served," before turning away like she hadn't just split my life down the middle. Before you continue this story, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Stories like this reach farther when shared, and you never know who needs to hear it. I stood frozen on the porch, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the traffic on Cedar Ridge Lane. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I sat down on the steps and opened it slowly, my hands trembling despite myself. The title at the top made my stomach drop. Elaine and Victor Whitfield versus Amara Whitfield. I read the pages once, then again, then a third time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. The accusations were absurd and cruel. Intentional interference, unjust enrichment, fraudulent advantage, breach of familial obligation. They claimed I had deliberately sabotaged my older brother's future and used family influence to build my business. They demanded $310,000 in damages and full ownership of my house as restitution. My phone rang before I could even process it. I already knew who it was. "Mom," I said when I answered, my voice sharper than I intended. "What is this?" "Don't take that tone with me," Elaine snapped. "You left us no choice." The words barely registered. "You're suing me?" I whispered. My father, Victor, came onto the line. His voice was flat, rehearsed. "Amara, this is happening. You can settle quietly, or we'll let the court handle it." "Settle for what?" I asked, standing up and pacing my porch. "I didn't do anything." "You know exactly what you did," he said coldly. "You built your success using this family." I almost laughed. "Using what? We don't have connections. We're average. Middle class." Elaine grabbed the phone again. "You stole Daniel's future. That house should have been his." In the background, my brother's voice rose, raw and furious. "She took my life." I closed my eyes. "Daniel, you're 26 and still sleeping in the guest room. I didn't take anything from you." The call ended abruptly. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence. I sat back down on the porch steps and stared at the envelope in my lap like it might explode. After a minute, I called my best friend, Rowan. "My parents are suing me," I said. She went quiet. "That's not funny, Mara." "I'm not joking." I explained everything. The lawsuit. The accusations. The demand for my house. Rowan exhaled slowly. "They've lost their minds. I watched you build everything yourself. They're saying I ruined Daniel's chances." I said, my throat tight. "That I stole opportunities meant for him." Rowan scoffed. "Stole what? Your mom works in HR. Your dad's a logistics supervisor. What influence?" She was right. Daniel had failed because he never followed through. Not because I succeeded. As I sat there, memories started surfacing, one after another. I was 14 when I asked my father for $30 to join the school robotics club. He barely looked up from his laptop. Money doesn't fall from the sky. If you want it, earn it. That same week, Daniel received $900 for a summer startup boot camp. He quit after 2 weeks and spent the rest on gaming equipment. So I mowed lawns, cleaned garages, fixed neighbors' computers. By the end of that summer, I had saved $1,100. At 16, I bought myself a used bike from a classifieds listing. 2 months later, Daniel got a brand new performance sedan to motivate him. When I turned 18, I bought my own car, an old silver coupe, with money from tutoring and freelance tech work. Daniel crashed his second car within a year. My parents bought him another one without hesitation. College made the difference impossible to ignore. Daniel went to an elite private university. There was a catered send-off party. Balloons. Speeches. Photos. I earned a full scholarship to a public university. I told my parents over dinner. Victor nodded once. "You've always handled yourself." That was it. College meant 3 jobs for me. Campus IT. Tutoring. Freelance web design. 35 hours a week and a full course load. Daniel graduated with mediocre grades and $240,000 in loans my parents co-signed. When he moved back home unemployed, Elaine defended him. The economy is hard. No one asked how I was surviving. I graduated debt-free with $18,000 saved. At 20, I started my online accessories business. I researched suppliers for months. Built the site myself. Shipped orders from my bedroom. My first year brought in $62,000 in revenue and $14,500 in profit. Daniel failed 2 businesses in that same time frame. One was a smoothie bar he never licensed. The other was a digital investment scheme he copied from social media. My parents blamed bad timing. At 21, I bought my house. Down payment, $32,000. I sanded floors, patched drywall, painted late into the night. When my parents visited, Victor said, "Must be nice to get lucky." Daniel muttered, "That place should have been mine." Now it was listed as owed to him. That night, I searched for lawyers. I found a firm known for dismantling frivolous lawsuits. The reviews were brutal and glowing at the same time. They don't just win. They make the other side regret trying. I left a message. My parents are suing me for being successful. I want to fight. The next morning, attorney Nolan Pierce called me back. "Amara," he said calmly after hearing everything, "this is one of the most baseless cases I've seen in 2 decades. Can they win?" I asked. "No," he said. "But you have a choice. You can just win, or you can respond." Respond how? Counterclaim. Abusive process. Emotional distress. Legal fees. I didn't hesitate. I want them to regret it. "Good," he said. "Send me everything." I had 7 years of records. Every paycheck. Every expense. Every dollar they gave Daniel. Total, $355,000 to him. 0 to me. I compiled it all into a 52-page document titled, A Financial and Behavioral Timeline. When I finally slept, I did so without fear for the first time in weeks. 2 weeks later, Nolan called. "They've been served." "What happened?" "Your mother left me a voicemail accusing you of elder abuse." I laughed bitterly. "She's 59. They panic when the truth shows up," he said. And that was only the beginning. The morning after the counterclaim was filed, my phone felt heavier than usual. I didn't need to check it to know what was waiting. Missed calls. Voicemails. Messages layered with guilt, rage, and panic. I left the phone face down on the kitchen counter and made coffee instead, forcing myself to focus on the ordinary. The hum of the kettle. The creak of the floorboards I still hadn't fully fixed. This house was real. My work was real. No amount of lies could erase that. By noon, Nolan Pierce called again. "They're unraveling," he said calmly. "Your mother called twice. Your father once. Their attorney is already uneasy." "What do I do?" I asked. "Nothing," he replied. "You've done enough for years. Let the process work." That afternoon, my friend Rowan came over with takeout and quiet determination. She didn't ask how I was holding up. She already knew. She just sat with me on the couch while I explained the counterclaim and the evidence package I had sent. "They really gave Daniel over $300,000? She asked, stunned. "Yes," I said. "And they're still acting like I owe him more." Rowan shook her head. "This isn't about money anymore. It's about control." She was right. Within days, the story spilled onto social media. My mother, Elaine, posted a long, emotional message framed as concern and heartbreak. "We only asked our daughter to help her struggling brother," she wrote. "Now she's attacking us legally." The comments didn't go the way she expected. One aunt asked, "What help did Amara receive over the years?" Another wrote, "Didn't you pay for Daniel's businesses and school?" Elaine replied vaguely, "Amara never needed help." That sentence followed me for days. She never needed help. As if strength erased the right to fairness. Daniel posted too. A bitter rant about betrayal and entitlement. He claimed I weaponized success against him. Someone replied, "Didn't you sue her first?" He didn't answer. 2 days later, my Aunt Miriam called me directly. We hadn't spoken much before, but her voice was gentle. "I wanted to hear your side," she said. So I told her. Everything. The favoritism. The money. The lawsuit. She was quiet for a long time. "I knew they favored Daniel," she finally said. "But I didn't know they'd go this far." "I didn't either," I admitted. "Don't back down," she said firmly. "They need to face this." The first deposition was scheduled 3 weeks later. Nolan warned me ahead of time. "It won't be pleasant, but it will be revealing." I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because I was scared of the truth, but because I knew how ugly it could sound when spoken out loud. The conference room felt cold despite the sunlight streaming through the windows. My parents arrived first. Elaine avoided my eyes. Victor stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Daniel came in last, wrinkled suit, defensive posture, resentment written across his face. I sat beside Nolan, hands folded, breathing evenly. Elaine was sworn in first. Mrs. Whitfield, Nolan began politely. How much financial support have you provided your son Daniel since he turned 18? She hesitated. I don't know the exact number. An estimate will do. Maybe 150,000? Nolan slid a document across the table. Would reviewing this refresh your memory? Her face drained of color. Yes, she whispered. That looks right. And how much financial support have you provided Amara in that same period? Elaine swallowed. None. The room was silent. What evidence do you have that Amara sabotaged Daniel's businesses? Nolan asked. She refused to help him, Elaine said weakly. Is she legally obligated to provide unpaid labor? No. Did Daniel ever help Amara with her business? Elaine didn't answer. So your lawsuit is based entirely on Daniel's feelings, not facts? Elaine's eyes filled with tears. He told us she hurt him. Nolan nodded calmly. Thank you. Victor's deposition was shorter but harsher. Yes, Daniel received more support, he admitted. He needed it. And Amara? Nolan asked. She's always managed on her own. Did she ask for help? Victor paused. Once. And what did you say? I told her to figure it out. Daniel's deposition was the hardest to watch. When Nolan asked him why his smoothie bar failed, Daniel blamed regulations. Did you research them? Nolan asked. No. Permits? No. Business plan? I had ideas. Nolan presented evidence of similar businesses succeeding in the same area at the same time. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Then came the key question. How exactly did Amara sabotage you? She didn't help me, Daniel snapped. Did you ask her directly? No, he admitted. Did you help her when she started her business? Silence. Why do you believe her house should belong to you? Daniel exploded. Because she's living the life that should have been mine. I'm the oldest. Nolan smiled slightly. That's all I needed. Afterward, Nolan leaned back and exhaled. That was devastating for them, he said. They admitted everything. Do you think they'll settle? I asked. They'll try, he replied. But they're already too deep. 3 days later, his prediction came true. Their attorney wants to talk, Nolan told me. They're offering to drop everything if you drop the counterclaim. No, I said immediately. That means trial, he reminded me. They chose this, I said. I'm finishing it. The weeks leading up to trial were tense. My parents sent long emails about family unity. Daniel left angry voicemails from unknown numbers. I deleted them all without listening twice. Instead, I focused on my business. Orders increased. I hired part-time help. I reminded myself daily, let the court decide. 2 days before trial, Rowan asked gently, Are you ready? They stopped being my family when they tried to take my home, I said quietly. Trial morning arrived with crisp air and bright sunlight. I wore a navy suit and walked into the courthouse beside Nolan, spine straight, heart steady. My parents sat across the room, worn down. Daniel glared at me like I had personally ruined his life. The judge entered. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and calm authority. Mr. Green, she said to their attorney, summarize your client's claims. He barely finished before she interrupted. I've read the depositions, she said. You gave your son over $300,000 and your daughter nothing. Now you're suing her for succeeding. Is that correct? Silence. When Nolan presented the counterclaim, the courtroom was still. Finally, the judge spoke. The plaintiff's complaint is dismissed with prejudice. The defendant prevails on the counterclaim. Attorney fees in the amount of $21,600 are awarded. Additional sanctions of $6,500 are imposed for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Elaine gasped. Victor stared at the table. Daniel stormed out. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Outside, Nolan shook my hand. You stood your ground. Rowan hugged me tightly. You did it. But the aftermath had only just begun. The days after the trial felt unreal, like walking through a city after a storm where everything looked the same but felt different. I woke up each morning expecting dread to return, that familiar knot in my chest, but it didn't. Instead, there was quiet. A calm I had never known growing up in that house where love felt conditional and approval always came with a price. The judgment spread through the family faster than I expected. Group chats went silent. Some relatives stopped calling entirely. Others reached out cautiously, as if unsure whether I was still the same person or someone transformed by the courtroom. I didn't chase any of them. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for repairing relationships I didn't break. Daniel posted again online 2 days after the verdict. A long, angry rant about bias, corruption, and how the system favored people with money. The irony was almost laughable. The comment section dismantled him within minutes. Didn't your sister build everything herself? You sued her first. How is your failure her fault? He deleted the post before the hour was over. Elaine tried a different approach. She wrote a public message filled with tears and vague apologies, hinting that she had been misunderstood. My Aunt Miriam commented simply, "Stop. You hurt your daughter. Let her heal." I blocked the thread and went back to work. Business didn't pause for family drama. Orders kept coming. A distributor reached out about a larger contract. I hired my first full-time employee, a quiet woman named Celeste who reminded me of myself at 19. Capable, underpaid elsewhere, hungry for opportunity. I paid her fairly, trained her patiently, gave her credit for her ideas. Every choice I made felt intentional, shaped by everything I wished someone had done for me. A week after the trial, Miriam called again. "I need to warn you," she said gently. "Your parents are struggling." I leaned back in my chair. Struggling how? They refinanced their house twice to cover Daniel's debts. With the judgment and sanctions, they can't keep up. Bankruptcy is likely. I closed my eyes, not in guilt but in exhaustion. They made those choices. "I know," she said. "I just didn't want you blindsided when someone tries to make it your fault." "I'm done carrying that," I replied. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. I already knew who it was. Daniel stood on my porch looking smaller somehow. Thinner. Unshaven. The confidence he once wore like armor was gone. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He didn't sit. He paced the living room like it might reject him. "I need help," he said finally. "Mom and Dad are losing the house. I'm sleeping in my car." I crossed my arms. "You sued me." "I know," he said quickly. "I messed up. I was angry. You tried to take my home," I replied calmly. "Why would you think I'd help you now?" His face twisted. "Because you're my sister." "Family doesn't sue family," I said. "Family doesn't rewrite history to steal what they didn't earn." "You're successful," he insisted. "You can fix this." I shook my head. "You want me to save you from the consequences you avoided for years." Silence filled the room. "Please," he said softly. "Get out," I replied. He left without another word. 2 months later, Elaine and Victor filed for bankruptcy. They moved into a small apartment with Daniel. The extended family fractured. Some blamed me openly. Others finally said what they'd been thinking for years, that favoritism had poisoned everything long before the lawsuit. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I focused forward. My company passed $410,000 in annual revenue. I signed a lease for a small office space with real windows and a conference room. At a networking event, I met someone named Naomi. She was sharp, warm, driven, and entirely uninterested in competing with me. Our conversations were easy, honest, safe. That feeling alone told me everything. 6 months later, a letter arrived from Victor. I almost threw it away. It was handwritten. Shaky. "We were wrong," it read. "We thought helping Daniel meant sacrificing you. We assumed you'd always be fine. We never realized how much we were hurting you. The lawsuit was our worst mistake. We don't expect forgiveness. We just wanted you to know we finally see it." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Not as closure, just as proof that reality had finally caught up. 2 years passed. I was reviewing quarterly reports in a coffee shop when I looked up and saw Daniel standing in line. He looked healthier, calmer, wearing a retail manager's uniform. He noticed me and hesitated. "Can I sit?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm not here for money," he said immediately. "I just wanted to apologize." I waited. "I went to therapy," he continued. "Real therapy. I thought being the oldest meant success should come automatically. I blamed you because it was easier than facing myself." He swallowed. "You didn't steal my future. I wasted it." I studied him carefully. "I'm rebuilding," he said. "Paying Mom and Dad back. Taking night classes. Trying to be better. I appreciate the apology, I said finally. But I don't know if we can be close again. That's fair, he replied quietly. Life kept moving. Revenue passed $720,000. I hired more staff. Naomi moved in. The house felt warmer now, fuller, no longer echoing with old pain. A year later, a cashier's check arrived in the mail for $21,600. A note followed. Daniel insisted on paying back the judgment himself. Took 2 years. He wanted you to know he accepts responsibility. I stared at it for a long time. Then I donated it to a scholarship fund for low-income students who worked while studying. Students like the girl I once was. When my daughter was born, I held her and felt something settle deep inside me. A promise forming without words. She would grow up loved without comparison. Supported without condition. Never asked to earn basic care. My parents visited the hospital quietly, respectfully, grateful just to be included. Daniel came later with a children's book and careful sincerity. It wasn't a perfect reunion. It was a beginning. Months later, we shared our first small family dinner in my home. Awkward pauses. Gentle smiles. Slow, cautious healing. That night, as I watched my daughter sleep, I understood something that had taken years to learn. Winning the lawsuit wasn't the victory. Building a life where I no longer needed their approval was. And if this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. You never know whose freedom begins the moment they realize they're allowed to choose themselves.